high-powered radar.
Move this way, sorry.
Yep.
But yeah. Yeah, keep going.
Not just nukes, high-powered radar, even lasers. I mean, the tech that we're testing out in these test sites, obviously we're testing nukes, but there's so much other technology that's being tested there as well, and people often forget that. It's like that's where the cusp of new technology is coming from.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were to monitor this planet, like that's where you would be, right? And so when people say, why is it only in America? First of all, we all know it's not only in America, but there is a significant amount in America. And part of that is due to the fact that America is the world's superpower in terms of like military and tech, and as far as we know. And so, that would be a reason. Now, here's the other thing, though, is that China keeps everything locked down. So does Russia, kind of, but China more. And so, we just have really big mouths about this stuff too. Like we're out here saying, "Whoa, there's UFOs here." Dude, for all we know, there might be a ton of crash retrievals over in China. You would never know.
James Fox has reported on the Russia and China thing a lot, like the little bit that he was even able to get. And it happens.
Well, you have to think like we have compartmentalized sort of projects that if you were to work on a UFO, for instance, and this brings us to like Bob Lazar, he would be off with his partner working on propulsion. You'd have another team working on the metal of the craft or on weaponry or on whatnot. And those people would not be allowed to talk to each other. And we don't have to look further than our own space programs. I have a friend who worked at SpaceX, and he was working on a part of the rocket. He wasn't allowed to know what that part was for that he was working on. He's like, I would probably be able to do far greater work if you just told me what this was for. And they go, don't worry about it. And that's it. And it's going on a rocket. It's not, but that's how compartmentalized systems work. So it's not specifically for UFOs, but it's in all types of defense technology sort of projects. And so when you're looking at the UFO space specifically, we have all these compartmentalized things going on. Well, China, they're just like, all right, here's our 500 best engineers. Talk amongst yourselves. Figure it out. And then bring it all back to me. There's no compartmentalization over there.
Then how do they keep a secret?
Here we have to keep a secret because the president shouldn't know about this stuff for many reasons. One, because plausible deniability. If ever something comes out and the president knew about it, he's now in trouble.
Yeah.
They can put him in jail because he knew about this illegal activity. And so they have to keep this information compartmentalized because they got a new president every 4 years.
Yeah.
Not the case in China, not the case in Russia. That's right. Everything goes to the top. And so if you want to ask, if I had to pick like one person to ask about their UFO program, it'd probably be Putin. Like that guy probably knows everything about the UFO program.
A lot of open land in Russia too.
Yeah, and he's been around forever. Mm-hmm. And you know that like he just grabbed everything from the previous guy. There's no hiding stuff from that guy. So, and that's the difference, I think, between this compartment. I think compartmentalization actually will hurt us in the long run. And I think that might be why a lot of these top physicists who are looking into this stuff are worried. And especially Bob Lazar, he was saying this stuff too, back in the early 90s was, let us work together, because if not, they're going to figure it out much faster than we are.
This is the part that kind of hangs me up. The compartmentalization here also makes verifying things for the people that do leak it or decide to go public harder because they only know one little piece. Yep. And it's like,
they don't even know that they're working on something exotic.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whereas, yes, you're talking about totalitarian regimes here, especially China and Russia, where, there's always the threat of death and stuff like that. But when you bring 500, 1,000, 2,000 people on it, and they all know and they're all a part of it, even if they all feed that to the president, if one of them gets out of the country and defects, they got everything. You know what I mean? Like, the risk is so high.
Yeah, but also I don't think, culturally it is different. If you look at, America versus other countries, there's a massive cultural gap between how we treat things and we're ready to like boast about our first victory or whatever. Where a lot of these countries, most of the Asian countries specifically, are very humble when it comes to that stuff, and they don't really talk about. They're just like nose down, work, do what's good for your country. Very patriotic. It's very rare that you'll see like defectors in any other, and maybe I'm wrong here, but in any other like work. Like what else do you see a lot of Chinese defectors when it comes to nuclear technology, when it comes to AI, when it comes to no, right? So
AI, I've seen a couple, but
yeah. Well,
nuclear.
and
now.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were some that came out from the UFO stuff as well, but they'll probably treat it the same way they treat everything else and just snuff it out, and you know.
It gets the thing about the UFO thing though is it's not it's a borderless thing.
Yeah.
Right, which technically all technology is. Don't get me wrong, but like this is, I shouldn't even say borderless. It is something quite literally not of this earth, which is something that affects us all regardless of what borders and laws we live within, right? So you would think there would be like another layer to that has nothing to do with like, oh, like Chinese patriotism or Russian patriotism or United States patriotism, and more has to do with like, you know, if you were working on a project and you're like, holy shit, we recovered 100-yard-long craft and reverse engineered anti-gravity because some fucking Zeta Reticuli, you know, crashed this year. The ontological shock of that, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe culturally they'd just be like, oh, wow, cool, all right, forgot in China, you know, but...
Or scared to talk.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a real thing. There's a lot of... Most of the people would be scared to talk. I'm just saying all it takes is one. It takes one to not be scared.
Yep, true, but then who's he telling? You know, where's he going?
CNN?
Yeah, good luck.
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Like, where do you go? Where you're a Chinese guy, you speak Chinese, you're coming to America, or you're leaving China, let's say, and you want to go public. Where do you go? Who do you talk to? You speak Chinese, you speak Mandarin. You're trying to, you know, first of all, anything you say, we're gonna think is some propaganda. You know, there's nothing you can say that I'm gonna think is real. You know, so yeah, I think it might be easier to keep secret than we think, but other parts of it I also think are really hard to keep secret, and that stuff's been coming out and we just kind of ignore it. Like you talked about Bob Salas there, or like there's so many other cases of whistleblowing that has happened, and I don't mean whistleblowing through like the DOPSR regulated, you know, path. I mean actual people who are coming out, quote unquote, illegally to say that, hey, there's a problem here, you know. And the first one I can think of is Bob Lazar.
Have you ever met Bob Lazar?
I have, yeah. Spent time with him.
Like at dinner, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I spent a couple days with him because he was
spent a couple days with him.
Yeah, he was in town working on the documentary, the S4, the Bob Lazar story. It's my friend Luigi Venditelli, who's also in Montreal, so I got to hang with him there.
What did you think of him?
Incredibly normal guy. And I think everybody who meets Bob kind of says that about him. He's just like a salt of the earth type guy. My bullshit meter wasn't off at all. Like, it didn't go off. Like, it was... I can say he does get incredibly... There is stress when he talks about this stuff, but you can tell it stems from a place of fear. And that you can just detect off someone. Like, his energy shifts. And not to an energy of, oh, I'm trying to lie. It's more of an energy of like, I gotta talk about this. Like, it's like it conjures up something very,
well,
very,
don't
very
talk about it.
Profoundly dreadful in him.
You feel that way.
You can feel that. I remember speaking to him and talking to him about like Majestic 12 stuff.
Oh, yeah. Tell people what Majestic 12 is.
Yeah, it was apparently this group that was formed after the Roswell crash that consisted of 12 people, including, you know, generals and scientists and leaders of industry, to cover up the UFO stuff. And then they formed what was known as the Majestic 12, which is, hey, this information is going to be, you know, only known by these 12 people. And as soon as one leaves, another one comes in type deal. And... so he had heard the term, right? According to him, he'd heard the term at S4. He'd heard like the term majestic. Even his badge had MAJ on it, so he had like majestic clearance, which was, very few people had that. And so I was talking to him about it, and he was like kind of interested because he's not a UFO guy. He doesn't know about any of this stuff. And he told me, I was talking to him about Aztec, the Aztec crash, which is a crash that happened in 48, in March 48, so 9 months after Roswell, which is, I think, probably the most well-documented crash in history.
Which one? Fill me in on that. I want to say Ryan Wood talked about that, but there were a bunch we talked about when he was here.
Maybe Ryan Wood would have talked about it. I know that Scott and Suzanne Ramsey wrote a book on it. Bill Steinman wrote a book called UFO Crash at Aztec.
What happened at Aztec?
It was a 100-foot disc, 100-foot in diameter disc that hit the side of a bluff that was witnessed by this guy at the Archuleta Ranch, and then veered off and landed on a mesa in Aztec, which was then found by 2 people, and then the Air Force was called in. Took 2 weeks for them to recover it. There were 16 bodies apparently that were pulled from that wreckage. There's a great video that UAP Gerb did a real deep dive on it. He does great stuff. And I helped Jesse I directed a video that's going to come out on Jesse's channel.
Oh, very cool.
We went down to Aztec in New Mexico and went to the crash site and went to
16 bodies were recovered from
Yeah,
it?
allegedly, yeah.
What allegedly happened to them?
They were sent off to initially Los Alamos, and then from what we gathered to Wright Pat. At least the crafts were sent to Wright Pat. Maybe the body stayed in, I don't know.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would have been Wright Airfield at the time, I think.
Okay, so you were talking to Bob Lazar about this?
Yeah.
What was the context there talking about that with him?
Because we were talking about majestic stuff, and I was just talking about things that's the plaque at the crash site. I went there. That was written by Scott Ramsey there.
Yeah, I'll just read this real quick. Joe pulled this up. On or about this site on March 25th, 1948, a spacecraft of origins unknown crashed or landed on this mesa. Is alleged the Los Alamos radar station in nearby El Vado, Mexico, tracked the errant landing to this site. A high-security recovery operation led by the Air Force and the 5th Army Division was responsible for the removal of this craft. The recovery operation took approximately 2 weeks, with all the remains being taken to Los Alamos Laboratory for scientific study and evaluation by some of the world's leading scientists. Later, it was rumored to have been taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The recovery of this craft by the U.S. government and military was one of the most secretive recoveries of a spacecraft with origins unknown since the similar recoveries in Roswell, New Mexico 8 months earlier. The spacecraft was approximately 100 feet in diameter and 18 feet tall. It was one of the most intact crafts that the government had recovered at that time. Sadly, all occupants, as many as 16, died as a result of this crash, making the full disclosure of both purpose and origin all but impossible. The plaque has been placed here to bring awareness to an event that has been kept secret for 59 years and is a significant part of America's history.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Bob about that, and he was really interested because he told me, he's like, he goes, John would talk about this stuff all the time, and I never believed him. And he was referring to John Lear, who's a well-known conspiracy theorist, but also a pilot for the CIA, and so, but. Bob was really clear with me, at least, that the relationship he had with John Lear was one that was friendly, but he didn't buy into any of the stuff John was saying. Like Bob would say, "Oh, John thought people lived in the sun." Like he just kind of threw everything out. So he never really registered that any of this could be real. He thought it was all hogwash, kind of. And so when I brought up Majestic 12 and I brought up Aztec and this and that, you could see him being like, wait, you think this happened? And I'm like, oh yeah, especially Aztec. I'm pretty high conviction after reading Steinman's book and looking into Scott and Suzanne Ramsey's work. They got a new book coming out soon, by the way, on this stuff. It's really interesting. There's an overwhelming evidence that it did happen. And then I remember mentioning to Bob that there was a witness that came out that said they saw this craft in a hangar at Wright-Patterson, and they were doing a high voltage test on it, and it went translucent, like kind of see-through. but not fully, like kind of like a shower glass.
Yeah, where you could see the shape of
You
it.
could see shapes of people. And Bob got all excited, and he goes, "That's exactly what it was like." And he started like, and it was just me and him. Like he got, you could tell, like visibly excited by it. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, when he was in the craft, the one time he was allowed in the UFO, they were measuring the chair, whatnot, or the seating device, and he was looking, and all of a sudden, one of the panels went invisible, one of the panels of the craft, and symbols started appearing on the panels." According to him, that was the only time he's allowed in the craft, but he remembers that, and he speaks about that. And so when I mentioned it wasn't completely transparent, he got all excited because he's like, that's what it was like. He never that's not a detail that he'd ever mentioned, but you saw that it excited him that it came from someone else. And so, it was really interesting to see him react to that stuff, and he's not opposed to like meeting people like Scott and Sudan Ramsey, people who he can trust know something. I think he's afraid of engaging with the UFO space because of how many people speculate. He does not like to speculate. Sure, he'll like talk about things, but when it comes to what he's seen, and he's very, very careful about talking about stuff because he doesn't want to give people the wrong idea. Even in the blue documents that they had him read, where they briefed him on these alleged blue documents that contained all sorts of secrets about religion, from hybridization program, genetic modifications in humans, and that the anatomy of a gray, where they're from, what star system, like all this stuff he had to be briefed on. He never believed any of it. And he really is reluctant to talk about it in public. He'll chat about it like off camera, I think, but in public, he just doesn't want to give people the impression that it's true. He's like, he knows about passage material and the fact that sometimes they'll put bullshit in there to see that if you talk about it to someone else, they'll know exactly who it came from.
Yep.
And he's like, they do that. They do that. And he's like, so he's like, the only thing I can say is that whatever they showed me about the craft that he worked on, that was true. So, I can only surmise that whatever else he read about is also true, but he'll never make that assumption.
So because obviously, like, you're very familiar with this story and everything, because you're into all this stuff. But did you have him like kind of go through it step by step with you again?
Yeah, we touched on it. We definitely, I was able to like poke and prod where I thought there might be weaknesses. I'm high conviction on Balbazar. I'm extremely high conviction on Balbazar. That he went through what he went through.
So he says that he was working out at Area 51, Nellis Air Force Base. He had access to S4.
He was working at S4.
He was working. I'm sorry. He was working at S4, and at some point, as a physicist, engineer, I should say, and at some point, he's brought in. He's
brought in. He was actually recruited. So he'd met Edward Teller, who knows the father of the H-bomb.
Mm-hmm.
He'd met him at a talk once, and then Teller was reading the newspaper, and on the front page of the paper was Bob. It was a local Los Alamos paper, and Bob was on the front cover because he'd made a jet engine car, and he's a big fan of like propulsion and racing and doing dangerous shit, and just kind of like, he's a bit of a badass. He loves exploding things, and he used to host Desert Blast, which is this thing where they'd blow shit up in the desert.
Yep.
So Bob's a bit of a badass when it comes to that stuff. So he thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to meet Teller and to be like, hey, that's me on the cover. And so they kind of like go back and forth. Teller gives him his contact info, and then I think years later, I don't even think it's months, I think years later, he was looking for a job. He's like, oh, maybe I want to go back into working as like a scientist. And so he had hit up Teller, and Teller said, oh, I might have a job for you, and had him come down to, I forget where, it was in Las Vegas, but to do some interviews. So he did a few interviews, got him a job. They said, yeah, you'll be perfect for this. Didn't know what the job was, weird questioning, and like kind of like, what do you do in your personal time, which is a weird thing to ask. And then, yeah, they'd fly him out to, they took the Janet Airlines, which is the airplane that goes from Las Vegas airport to the airport, the airstrip at Area 51. And then from there, he'd get into a bus and do a 20-minute ride by himself.
By himself, no one
By
else.
himself, and Dennis Mariani, his supervisor, would be in there with him. And then they'd go to S4, where he would eventually be told that, what he's working on was reverse engineering of an alien craft, and that their number one priority was to figure out how it worked.
And they said alien craft.
That
was the term
they
they
didn't
used?
say, no, they didn't say anything. In fact, they put him in a room and had him read documents, and the documents said it was from Zeta Reticuli. It was, all this stuff, that it was, it hinted that this particular craft was from an archaeological dig that might have been 10,000 years old. So all this stuff. But again, Bob, he's reading this stuff and he's like, oh, this is probably a test. They're probably testing me, to see if I'm insane. So he doesn't know. He doesn't, in fact, when he first walked in, when he first saw the craft the first time, it had an American flag sticker on it.
Right, they had put it on there.
And he goes, in his head, he's like, oh, that's what people are about. He's like, it's just ours. He didn't think aliens. He thought, oh, this is just ours. But, people are seeing this, and, that explains it, finally. Logical thing to think. And, then he goes to read these documents and whatnot, and then he gets to work with the actual reactor and the transmitter and the amplifier, the gravity amplifier, and the propulsion, essentially, of the craft.
Was anyone else working on it with him?
Yeah, one person, Barry Castillo, I think his name was. And that's his only partner. And Bob was actually, according to Bob, was replacing Barry's other partner, who had died tragically. Somehow, I think he thinks by cutting open the reactor, they try to do some testing. He doesn't know if more than one person died, but he knows that guy died. He was replacing a guy that dies due to that. So, Barry was really excited and to have a new partner, and he kind of briefed Bob and what his job would be. And then one day they were allowed to go inside the craft and measure stuff. And then one other day they were actually brought outside to see a test flight, where he got to see it under the desert. Right outside. So these doors are in the side of a mountain. There's 9 hanging doors, and they're camouflaged. And then they brought the craft outside. Somehow he wasn't aware of how they brought it out, and he was outside, and it was sort of in the air, and he was allowed to walk under it.
How would he forget how the craft is brought out? So he doesn't know that. But how would he be brought out? Would someone come in and be like,
Dennis
all right,
came in and said, they're doing a test.
With us.
You should see this.
Come through these doors, walk through the hallway, you get outside, and then suddenly.
Yep.
And how did he describe the test flight looking? And what did they do?
It went up and then went back down. No sound.
So
and there was a rate. This is the interesting thing, which always kind of stands out as weird. Even Bob thinks it's weird. That there was communication on a radio frequency between whoever was inside, allegedly, and with the person on the ground. And Bob's thinking, that's impossible. Because if you're creating a gravitational field around this, you're in your own space and space-time. There's no way radio frequency would get through that. Yeah, there's no way. So he doesn't know what that was about.
But he knows that the test pilot in that case had to be our guy rather than a fucking alien.
No idea. Doesn't know anybody that was in there. So he speculates I don't know, maybe they were trying to trick me. Maybe, they were, maybe they're, I don't know. I think, what if the only way we can fly it is with their help, right? Meaning them, or the kids as he refers them to them as, but the aliens, right? What if what if one of them was in there during that time, and they had to pretend it was a human, so they were radioing somebody else somewhere else, and Bob kind of maybe figured that out. I don't know. It's all that's all me speculating. I love thinking about this though.
I can tell. It's so fascinating.
So wild.
It's so fascinating because it's God, even if 10% of it's true, it's a big deal, right? But did you ask him about what when he saw it actually fly out there, if like that moment, obviously he's thinking about the science of the radio frequency thing, doesn't make sense, but was he also, did he have a moment to even like step back and be like, wait, my entire worldview has just completely changed?
It changed way before then, I think.
Way before that.
Yeah, when he was doing tests with the reactor.
When did the element 115 thing come in?
That's with the reactor.
Can you explain that again?
Yeah.
I always forget what the context is there.
Yeah, it's basically the fuel, and it's this little triangular slice of apparently element 115 that would go into the reactor. And I'm not exactly. If you want to know more about this, by the way, stay tuned for S4, the Bob Lazar story. They go through everything. It's a fantastic documentary. It's late, we get it, but it's coming. But they explain how all of that works. So essentially, it's the element 115 is like fed into something. It's hit with, I'm not even going to pretend to understand, but it creates 116, which decays, which then creates antimatter, and then that powers the craft somehow. They still don't know how. There aren't any wires connecting anything, and yet still things are working. Like, there's a lot of stuff. So Bob said he would just, it was like disarming a bomb every day. Like, he didn't know, it's, you give a nuclear reactor to somebody in the 1600s.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to get sick and die. They're going to kill people.
Right.
Like, he's like, that's what we were playing with. He's like, it was very dangerous. They had no idea the power. They could just test things. So they do this, and then, oh, nothing happened. And they do that, nothing happened. It was very boring, he said. But like stressful.
I'll bet.
And then he did some tests, which were really freaking cool.
What, like what?
The coolest one that he's ever talked about was they put a candle beside the reactor, and when they had the gravity amplifier, and when they turned the amplifier to like I guess it was like directional gravity, this thing. And so when you turn it, it like focuses gravity. And they would do that onto the flame of the candle would stop jumping. It would stand still, but it would still emit light, which was impossible to him. So it was like creating time dilation. Yeah, because he was amplifying gravity. And then he also did it once where they created like this, what seems like a black hole.
A black hole?
Yeah, it was like a round circle that was black. That was when they cranked it and like focused the gravity beam. It would create this round dot, and they didn't know what that was. They didn't interact with it.
You didn't like stick a finger out so you
No,
got sucked in?
because maybe that'll destroy the whole universe. Who knows? I don't know what kind of, but that's the type of technology you're working with when you're messing with gravity. And I'm sure that the U.S. government or whoever was in charge of the nuclear tests felt some of that when you're blowing up megatons of nuclear like you're probably tearing space-time on some level as well, right? So
start fucking around.
yeah, I think all that stuff's incredibly dangerous, but so
Yeah, I'll
fascinating.
bet.
Yeah.
How long did he say he was doing the work on it and the testing, approximately?
I think he was only there for a few months.
Still, that's like a lot of time
Yeah.
to spend with one craft.
Yeah. Well, he went in the craft once. Other than that, he was working with the reactor and just doing tests on the, trying to reverse engineer how it propels. There's some interesting stuff there, though. I mean, there's a ton of interesting stuff. Yeah.
Would they debrief him on a daily or weekly basis? And if so, like, who's doing that?
Nope.
I'm
So he would
watching
just
it,
he'd be brought in by the same guy, Dennis, you said his
Yep.
name was, to work on it
And
every
there's
day.
security guards everywhere
And then
that are
and then
constantly pushing you, constantly.
It's brave of
threatening
you to come to my camp.
pushing you and threatening you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uninvited.
Like checking his
fortune
ID.
favors
even
the
though, like,
bold.
he knows he works there. Like,
Let me ask you a question.
keep it down.
Me
like, all this,
first.
like, you better not fucking
Did your men
talk,
attack
like,
me and take my
constantly,
scanner?
Constantly berating them with
Now.
stress inoculation.
This is getting interesting.
And that's the environment. He's like, it's a
Are you here to kill
very
me?
high stress environment because these
I would,
people
if
would,
I were you.
yeah, they were like
When
bullets,
push comes to
essentially,
shove,
the security
strike
that was
first
there
and strike hard.
constantly. And
What's
it
your
would put you in
tone,
a state
though?
of fear. Like
We're on the
stress,
same
high
side.
stress and fear, constantly.
Iron and his crew
You'd
got
whisper
attacked while they were
when you were
refueling a
talking.
spent
Like, nobody,
artifact.
like it was,
Sound
look down.
The
There
boys
was
fought
a
them
red
off,
line and a blue line.
but I'm not about to let it
If you
slide.
crossed the red line, you were immediately shot, like type deal. You had to follow the blue line. Like it was
Do you know
high
who
stress
attacked your
environment,
men?
like very, very, very.
If
very-
I
and
knew,
so
I'd have buried
when
the
I
fuckers.
hear that,
But
you
they
know,
left
like,
me a
these are-
gift
this is
in the form of one
1989
of
when
their
Bob came
men.
out and he started talking about
I can
reverse
set up a
engineering
meeting
of the
for
craft.
you.
The first time we talked
He's
about
not a targeted
an
guy,
intact craft, that
but I
we're
bet you'll
reverse
think of
engineering, by the way.
something.
Everything else was a crash.
But it'll
before that.
cost you.
And so,
That
that was new.
or-
And then talking about the propulsion, talking about like how they're doing it in teams. Like nobody had
That's a
ever
lot of
really
money.
talked about that.
Any other options?
And then, just saying things like,
Nestor is in
the
the
high stress
past.
environment during the
Only
compartmentalization.
2 men stand in my way of becoming the kingpin of
You
garbage.
listen to Grush, you listen to all these guys,
Roosevelt,
what they're
the
talking
leader
about.
of
They're
the
talking about the same
commissary,
thing.
and the
you know.
Shah, the
And
boss
yet,
of the brood.
people are all freaking out about all these new
Roosevelt is
whistleblowers.
supported
Dude,
by
Bob was
duty,
saying all this stuff.
while the Shah is backed by
He was
freedom.
saying all of this stuff.
Since the
Everything
treaty,
we're
the
talking about
factions
now
no longer
started
fight in
with
the
Bob.
open.
Everything.
But they're both eager to
You
put
can
their
sit
puppet
there
in
and
charge
say,
of the
"Oh
slack
yeah, but this
I
doesn't
could
add
have
up,
wiped
but that
them out
doesn't
on my
add up."
own.
Maybe it does.
But a smart
Maybe it
man
does,
never
you just
misses
don't
a
know the
good
full story.
opportunity.
But rest assured that everything
Kill
he's
either
talking
of the
about
bosses and bring me his
is coming to
PDA.
light. We're talking about all the same things now.
After he puts in, a 10, 12
Your
hour day,
problem
whatever it
is
is,
already
in this
taken care
high-stress
of.
situation over
And
these
you
months,
expect me to
like
just
each
take
day
your
when
word
he's
for it?
escorted out of there by
I'm not
Dennis,
asking for their heads on a
he's just
platter.
sleep on the base
A
and
PDA would
Goes home.
suffice.
goes home.
Bring me a
takes the bus
PDA
back
and
and
we'll
flies
talk.
back to Vegas and then drives back home.
Flies back to
Yeah, he has to fly out of the Area 51 back to on Janet
So
Airlines.
he's doing like a
Crazy days.
multi-medium, 4-hour commute.
Yep. If you were there, he says that there might have been people that slept there. But he never did.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
Now,
Maybe if he would have stayed longer.
how did it end? How did he stop working on it? What was that process?
He was, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was some trouble in paradise. I think his wife was seeing someone else, having an affair.
Yep. And he didn't like.
Well, the
found it-
CIA was tapping him
Yeah.
like they do, or the CIA, or
That
whoever
was
the
it.
program was. They're just making sure that your home life is stable. Because if anything goes wrong at the home, then they're like, you might be a problem. You might be a liability. And so they were anticipating.
I want either
that
money
there was
or a
gonna be a problem
PDA
with
from
him,
one
that
of
they
the
would have to let him
kingpins.
go. And I think
Otherwise,
he
you're not
sensed
welcome
that,
here, loner.
but he didn't know why. So these guys found out before
About
he
your
did, about his
competition.
wife, right?
Let me make one thing clear.
Because they're tapping
They're
the
not
phones
my
and everything, so they
competition.
know what's going on.
Just
but
a
he
couple
doesn't.
of
So they're
lowlifes
anticipating that
who got
this is
ahead
gonna
because
go
of their
bad, we gotta
connections
let
with
him go
freedom
type
and
deal.
duty.
And so he started bringing
what do you
his
want?
friends up, like John Lear, I think Gene Huff, I think all these guys.
Tell me more
started bringing
about
them
this
up
Shah guy.
to a place which is no
The
longer
Shah is a
accessible, but
greedy
a place that
psycho.
overlooked
Freedom pumps him
S4
full of dough,
back
but his
then.
men only get the scraps.
And
It's almost like they
they
prop
would do
him up
test
just to
flights
spite duty.
Wednesday nights at like
I wish
2
I could
a.m.
tell
was
you the dog
least
from
amount
the
of air
brood is
traffic
all
or
bark
local
and no
traffic.
bite.
And
But I'm afraid
so
that's not the
he
case.
brought them up there on 3 separate occasions.
What kind of
to see
man
test
is that
flights,
Roosevelt?
And they saw.
I've
And they
never
saw
had any
there's even
dealings with
video of
Roosevelt.
that.
He's a stuck-up
It's
son of a
really,
bitch.
Like old 80s
But he's got a
footage, and
tough
it's just
crew
light,
and some
but
decent
it
gear,
skips. It goes
and he's not
just like he
stupid.
said it would.
Isn't that
Why
like
would he
breaking
kowtow
his
to duty
confidentiality
after they
agreement,
kicked
though,
him
doing
out?
that?
Yeah, 100%.
Beats
But
me.
he was afraid for
The
his
man's
life.
got no
He didn't know. He thought he
self-respect.
might be like.
Right,
offed.
so why
he was
didn't
getting
they-
paranoid.
That's all for now.
You're
Hey,
taking your
listen,
sweet
I'm
ass
not
time.
judging
And the
I'm
brother.
last
saying,
night
why
he got
wouldn't-
caught.
That's what I'm saying. Why wasn't he thrown in prison? Like, you would think this would be the thing they'd throw you in prison forever for.
For what?
I mean, they could lie about the details and say that's national security information and
And
put it
risk
to-
him just blowing up in prison and being like, "Oh no, this is what they did."
I mean,
They would
they've
much- they
killed
would much
people.
soo-
They've killed people for far less.
They would much sooner kill you. Yeah, and then that's why he was afraid, because he even says he's got ran off the road. He was shot at.
Yeah, why didn't that's the other thing? Like,
He went to George immediately.
immediately.
Yep, and broke
So
his
when
story.
he got caught, what happened when he got caught the last night again?
There's a bunch of people that came out, basically caught him, took all their names, and then sent them home. And then that's where he knew, like, he was like, "Uh-oh, this is going to be a problem."
So he goes to George Knapp, who's a local reporter
Yep,
in
and
Nevada.
KLAS, yeah.
And at first he does it without revealing his identity. So
Yep.
you just hear his voice. He says his name is like Dennis or something like
Which
that.
is his supervisor's name.
Yep. And he says, when he did the first one, how much did he reveal? Was it just like, hey, I've been working on stuff that's not of this earth? And
No.
kept it.
No, he said there's like 9 craft at
Okay.
the base. And
So he gave some
yeah,
detail.
Yeah.
And then not too long after, he actually goes public with his face with George.
I think he gets threats between then and when he came out. So I think that's what made him come out, was for his own safety. After that, he's like, I need to go public. I need to put my face out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think, you know, these are
I'm too
major
damn
things.
angry.
Yeah, huge.
Great. Do you think there's a lot of stuff that's happened since then, where these institutions that he claimed to be a part of say that the record of him being here, whether it be MIT
That
or
was
there was
stupid
another one as
shit.
well, I forget what it's called. It was like 3,000 miles away or something like that. You know, do you think some of that is explained by, you know, downward stream threats of people being told, like, hey, you got to deny this guy, deny his credibility, we have to destroy his credibility, etc.? Is that how you would explain it?
I can't really say. You know, there is, I think, a real reason why his records don't show up. I think that's very real.
What do you mean it's very real?
Well, I think the fact that, like, I think his records were destroyed. And I think that, I don't think he was the only one. I think there were other people whose were also, but I think, yeah. I don't think that, I'm going to say this. I think there's a
I
perfectly
want
good
either
reason
money
why
or a
there's no
PD.
records there. I think it makes sense if you hear it.
Sometimes I think about it like,
It's not
know-
for me to say. But,
About your
you know the
competition.
movie Shutter Island,
Let me make.
Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio?
yeah.
So
That's all for now.
spoiler alert, he's
You're
playing a
taking
guy
your
who turns out the whole time like he's actually
Yeah.
in an insane asylum. Everyone who then looks at him once the reveal is
Mhm.
given looks at him like, oh, crazy person, right?
Yeah.
Imagine being that person,
Yeah.
and everyone looks at you that way,
Mm-hmm.
even though both you and them know you're not crazy.
Yeah.
But they have to play the role of, like, almost like in the 1984 movie of Life, just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Bob, you don't really think that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's like this
Yeah.
assumed kind of thing. That's kind of what I wonder.
Bob doesn't give a shit. That's what's fun about Bob. He does not give a shit whether you believe him or not. He doesn't care. Couldn't be bothered. He doesn't care. It's so funny because, like, we're out here. What do you mean you don't believe in Bob? You look at the facts. No, you got this wrong. You know, you're not doing your homework.
Yeah.
Bob's like, let him. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Let him go.
He doesn't care if you don't believe him, and I love that about him. He can't be bothered. He's like, yeah, I know it happened. He's like, it happened. What do you want me to say? It happened. Like, I don't care what you say, you know. And he has that attitude. And he's maintained that, and it's the reason why he doesn't do a lot of interviews.
Right.
Is because he's like, I've told my story. Do your thing, you know, world. Take it, run. I'm not going to make anything up now. He's like, I've told you everything I know. That's all I can do.
Do you think the reason he's turned down, forget interviews, do you think the reason he's turned down doing like some debates and stuff with quote unquote qualified physicists or scientists or people within that space is because he's been taken advantage of and lied to before, and so he feels like anything he goes to do is a trap? It's kind of like a catch-22 for him. Like, he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Yeah, he's. I'd imagine he would be distrustful of a lot of
Yeah.
people for a varying amount of reasons, whether it's government secrecy or just personal gain. Like, I think there's a lot to be distrustful of being him. And again, I just think he gave all the information that he had to give. He's put out enough information out there where you're like, okay, it's time for you to piece the puzzle together. You know, if you're him,
What?
you're not trying to debate anybody. Who cares? If you know, why should he spend his energy convincing people what he went through was real when he knows it to be real?
I think the counter argument, and I understand where he would come from mentally on that, because it's such a crazy life experience that he had. I think the counter argument would be the classic, look, you know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which
Yeah.
means putting it to the test. The question is, are the people that put it to the test going to do that in good faith? And how do you judge good faith? And if I were him, with his life history and all
Yep.
the things that have happened to him, you know, the things that he alleges
Sure,
and
yeah.
stuff, I might not be so trustful either of quote unquote good faith in those discussions.
Yeah, and what will it matter? Like, to what end? Like, it won't get. I don't think it'll further the conversation to have somebody debate, right? Because if they want to find a reason not to believe, they're just gonna, you know, it like I said, I don't think it's about belief. I don't think it's about believing Bob or not believing Bob. I think it's about taking what Bob said and then doing the work, doing the homework. But instead of pushing back on what he said and trying to verify his own credibility, why don't we just take the information and do the work for ourselves? Why don't we take what we can and hold it up against the rest, right? And see if it matches.
March your ass
And
over
so
here,
far,
Private.
it really matches. You know, and so
Wanna hunt
his
some mutants with a
word
real
aside, the
colonel
information
from
that he's
Judy,
giving you
Private.
is, I think, valuable, at least to a researcher.
How about this?
You know,
Colonel,
it definitely
get
fills a
your
lot of
hunt,
plot holes, which is
I get
fun.
some information.
You know, somebody's trying to piece
I need
this
to
stuff
get into
together.
the commissary quiet.
But yeah, I don't think
And
it's.
I hear you
I don't
know
think
the
he
place
should be put in
like
a
the
position
back
where
of
he has
your
to
hand.
convince anyone. I think he said what he has to say.
I
Take
used
it
to
or
have
leave it.
every rodent
kind of
out
agree
there lining
That
up
at this
to
stage, I
report
think
to me.
he just wants to live
Till that
a normal life.
bastard
and, you know,
Roosevelt.
he's a normal guy.
But
He's
none
not.
of your business. You want
I don't
information?
know. He's not out
Load
there
up your boots.
doing the convention tour or
See if
on
you're
a cruise
fit
ship.
for anything
still not a
beyond
UFO
wiping
guy.
freedom's
So-
asses.
Yeah, he's a science guy. You know, he has United Nuclear, his own company, where he still does science stuff, and
Weren't they like selling some shit and they got like investigated because bad people were buying it or something like that? But that's not on him.
he sells stuff to the government. He has government contracts.
That's hilarious.
You know, it is so funny. He does like I think uranium tests. They're like testing kits.
Nice
They have like
report.
small traces amount of
We're gonna
uranium, and they're for
butcher
like
'em like
calibration for like
cow.
Geiger meters
Right.
or whatever.
Oh,
They're like little
yeah,
cards,
you
and
freak.
like he'll sell those. He sells all sorts of like stuff like that, like really dangerous materials that he works with every day. So even for people thinking, oh, he's not a scientist, like, he's in the lab.
I'd like to see you sit down with him. 8 hours long. Too.
Yeah.
And then you were here, and on this date you were here.
Yeah.
That'd be very cool to go through that because you know, the little puzzle stuff he's done. I'm sure a lot of people have seen like that Rogan episode. I think it's his most popular one
Yeah.
ever. Like, he's a tough read. You know, he's just like kind of like you said, like to you when you got to spend a couple days. With him, it's like, yeah, there's no bullshit. It is. But when you're just watching him like on camera, just like 3 hours going through the story, he's got a real. I mean, it's like. It's like, man, you know, you're like kind of like, because it's, man, like I said, if 10% of that's true,
I think as far as like whistleblowers go, I think he's the most important whistleblower we've ever had.
I can't think of a bigger,
You know, he did it. He
story.
did it the way he's a true whistleblower. He didn't go through some government process, and I'm not denigrating any of those people, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, he came out and said everything that he could,
But
and then
flesh
people
will do
crucified
in
him
a
for it.
pinch.
Right.
You know,
Come over
whereas if he
here.
would have went through a government approved process, they would have still shat on him,
Sure.
right?
What do you think of Grush
Yeah, I think
and him coming out? Obviously, it's not quite a story.
No, but
like,
I think
Lazar, but
I think what he did was great. I think what he did was great, and I think it's a shame that more haven't. You know, I think him and Bob have something in common, in that
you see
I
that?
believe they both felt
My whole damn hunt is ruined
that more
now.
people would follow up.
Okay.
When
Since
they
we've
came
got
out.
nothing to shoot at,
I think Bob
Here's
was
an
hoping that
idea.
more people from S4
I'll
would be
give
like, yeah,
you
me
some
too.
time to hide
And I think
your
Grush felt more people from
And
the
then I
program would also
start
be like, yeah,
shooting.
me too. And I don't think it
Survive
happened.
for 1 minute,
And I think that sucks.
and you'll get your
You know, if you're in that
commissary
position.
pass.
So
oh, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes too. And
Yeah.
I think people get wind of that, like, oh fuck, I don't want that to happen to me.
yeah, and you see, you know, the barrage that he had to You know, and
Are
just for
you
that,
nuts?
just to not deal with
I'm
social
not about to
media
get myself
is a
killed,
big enough reason not to
Colonel.
come out. Just to be like, I don't
Think
want
you
that.
can ruin
I
my
don't
fun
want
now?
Yeah.
to have a Twitter
Fuck
profile
no.
now.
And that's the thing though. When you're coming out with something that big,
I got a better idea.
forget just the extraordinary
do the
claims
running.
require extraordinary
I
evidence.
do the
Every
shooting.
part of your life that's publicly
You
available
asshole.
is going to be picked
I'm
apart. And
gonna
there's,
get you.
I understand that, and that sucks. I can't imagine being in that position. That really does suck.
Yeah.
But like, it's relevant. You know
Yeah.
what I
Man,
mean?
no
Like who
bitch,
you
nigga.
are, where you're from, what your motives could be.
And if you don't come
it's
out,
all relevant.
Nobody knows
They
that you
don't
know
know.
shit, right? So they're never going to be like,
That's
you got to
right.
talk. They'll just leave you alone.
That's right.
But the second you say I might know something, now you're an asshole for not playing ball. Now you're might go to jail if you say something. Now you're in this weird position,
Yeah.
right? And you know, we know people like that who, you know, they'll come out and they'll say a little bit of something. But now you're playing ball. Now we know you know, and now it's like everybody's judging you, everybody's picking at your past and digging into everything you say and every interview and micro expressions and but if you just sit back, you don't got to say anything.
Right.
You know, and that's fine too. So it's like I get it, I do understand, but that's why what Grush did and what Bob Lazar did. I mean, it takes some balls, it takes
For
some guts,
sure.
yeah.
And then look, you're gonna get some people that are just gonna copycat that and jump on it, and some that'll just straight up lie, and then you'll get some stories that aren't reliable too, which then can denigrate the original person through no fault of their own. Which I think some of that's happened to David Grush.
Yeah.
Because you did have, like, you're right. A lot of the people that he's referring to, that he's like, I hope, and I don't know who these people are, but
Sure, yeah.
I hope they'll come out and talk about it. Clearly, all those people didn't.
Yeah.
And of the people that have, there's been no one to come out since Grush that I think has anywhere near the level of like bullshit meter, you know, smell test credibility that he does, and we've seen several. But like, it's also when you're in this space and you're getting sourcing now, a lot of the sourcing is coming from people that were in the government, right? That you know, they probably
Yep.
still are in some cases, and they're compartmentalized, like we were
Sure.
talking about earlier with some of this stuff. And so, you know, if you're someone like James Fox, right, our mutual friend, he's a documentarian. He has to go. He's not a government insider or like an insider in that case on UFOs. He has to go get the sources. So if you get, without naming names, certain people who had access to certain programs to tell you things that then seem reliable, and then those same people then end up feeding you things that are not reliable, it makes it makes you question all of that. I know James like deals with that. Like,
Yeah.
all right, if that wasn't, I know this isn't true, but does that mean that's not true? That seemed more true. This one's, you know what I mean? It's a really tough game to play.
It's tough, yeah. That's why, you know, podcasting is easy for us because you know we can sit across somebody who's living a you know, a schizophrenic reality, or is a government insider, you know, and it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Either way,
trying to
it's
figure it
entertaining,
out.
it's fun. We can talk about things and discover things and hypothesize and theorize about whimsical realities. But yeah, like people like James, it makes it a little bit more tough because he's in those courtrooms and he's in, you know, those interviews with the military folk, and that's why I think the more I study this stuff, the further from that disclosure UAP team I'm going, and not because it isn't valuable. I think sure it's valuable, it has its place. I just rather talk to a farmer than a lawmaker. At the end of the day,
That. That's a good bar. Farmer than a lawmaker.
yeah, they're just, you know, I don't know, somebody who's salt of the earth and just tells it like it is.
Yes.
You know, just because it comes from a guy in a suit who drafts up bills or whatever, it's not going to raise my conviction level. If anything, it'll lower it. So I think just talking to real people, experiencers, people who've, you know, had experiences, and hearing them out, and that's it. And then
Let the people judge.
yeah, I think we're you know, that's our part, the part that we play as podcasters
Where the fuck
in
are you
this
going? This bar
disclosure
is for the
forum.
brood.
I think
No
is
freaks
just
or
opening the
loners
conversation. I
allowed.
think that's a really important part to play, is just to have a platform where it's okay. And now
Got
that
it. Don't get your
you know,
panties
someone
in a bunch.
says,
I'll stay
"Oh,
out.
I was on the
Then
Julian
beat it.
Dory podcast," and they go, they go, oh yeah, I like that guy. Yeah, he had a guy in there who was talking about aliens the other day. It's like, it's not so insane, you know? And I think that's just in itself very important to just have that. And so I'm very happy. And James Fox and those guys digging a little bit deeper than I ever could possibly. So
It's like I go way back with James.
So I know to do. Pull a
Alessi,
grenade
who
out.
used to be the in-studio producer and runs all my. He's like the head of content with me now. He was down in Brazil making moment of contact with James in July 2021. James came to my parents' house a few years ago, did a couple podcasts that went nuts and all that. So, like, awesome guy, works his ass off, genuinely cares, and really is amazing at getting people to open up. And you see that in his work. And, like, whenever you're looking at anything, let alone something as wild as UFOs, doesn't matter who you are, you're never going to get it all right. Or there's going to be things that later you're like, I thought maybe that could be something, but that's actually bullshit. But you know how people are on the internet. They pick every fucking thing apart.
Where the fuck are you going?
And like James
This
made
bar is
another
for the brood.
brilliantly
No
put together
freaks or
documentary with
loners
the program
allowed.
that had, by the way, had a lot of
Got it.
important
Don't get your
storylines
panties in a
it
bunch. I'll
that
stay out.
absolutely
Then
have
beat it.
real verifiable stuff to it. But then also had Jason Sands in there. And this is where I ran into a problem, because the people that brought Jason Sands, which are, I think, like government suit type people like you were talking about, have brought him other stuff in the past that seemed more to pass the smell test.
yeah,
But then you see with Jason Sands and you realize that they knew that Jason had severe PTSD among other issues in his profile that would make him questionable at best as a witness, and then clearly someone who I don't think any of his story is real. I think it literally was all lifted from Gaia, and there's a whole explanation behind there. But like, when those same people were literally, I know, pushing that shit down James's throat, like, yo, just hear him out, have him on this documentary.
yeah.
It's like, what does that mean about some of the other stuff
Of course.
that we thought was pretty good?
Yeah.
Like, do you wrestle with that sometimes?
No. I just kind of take it in. It's fine. Like, I'm not. Just because I hear a story doesn't mean I believe it. So I'm very happy to hear all the stories, if they're true or not. I think true information is as valuable as somebody who's lying. I think if you're telling me the truth or lying, if I know you're lying, so I can prove it, and that's valuable information too. Just like you said. Now, after this, you're like, oh, now you start questioning the stuff. So I think it's important to get all this stuff. I don't care. You know, just let's. I don't know. Let's just dissect what we have and speculate on what we have. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. This is all we got to play with. I'm sitting here reading on Reddit and 4chan forums like I'm some type of researcher. It's all we got. You know what I mean? And people come down on me like that. They're like, hey, 4chan isn't legitimate source. Yeah, obviously, but it's all we got. It's all I got. I got some guy here claiming, so I'm gonna take it and read the whole thing. Something clicks, and if it doesn't, whatever. Now I have more information I did before. So that's how I kind of treat it all, whether it's the Jason Sands stuff or whatnot. I think, but I do hold witnesses that are outside the government sphere higher protection than I would somebody within the government, for sure.
You were talking earlier about underwater aspect of us, and how you see things that seem to like appear from there and show up when people test, or you talk about like laser beams and stuff like that going off, and it's like they show up. And then of course we all always talk about the fact that the ocean's completely unknown, but
Yeah.
it's like what the fuck could be down there. Do you think that not necessarily all of it, but some of it could be like DARPA, who could be 50 years ahead of us in technology, and at least we have it.
Well, I think there, yes, definitely. I think we've been exploring the ocean since like the 50s as well, right? With technology, with penetrating sort of radar or sonar or whatever. Down there, looking for crafts that we lost, you know, in terms of rockets or, you know, so we've been exploring that quite a bit. And yeah, I think it would be safe to assume that once or twice we've mistaken their technology for ours, or ours for theirs, or adversarial technology. Like, definitely, I think that there's, you know, we're at least 30 years ahead in tech, I would say.
What does that mean for something like AI? Because it's like,
Yeah, I think that means exactly what that means
like
for
we're
AI.
living in AI's reality and have been for a while, and we just don't know it.
I don't know. I would hope to think that if we did reach, you know, 0 point on AI or whatever, or the, you know, the peak of creating artificial intelligence, that we would hear about it instantly. I would think, like, that would just change everything. It would exponentially grow and just like take over everything immediately. I don't know. But in the event that we wouldn't find out that these intelligence exists, it does. It's for sure whatever the government has is better than what we have. That we know that, right?
That's why, like, when I listen to David Fravor's testimony, he's always really stood out to me, because he's just like describing what he saw, and then he gives you, you know, the actual video, like, here's what it was, here's where it moved. We definitely didn't know about technology-wise, so what the fuck is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a real open-minded nature to what he's revealing there that I think, obviously.
And he's like, it's not Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, but it's like, what's he even read in on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he knows he's still a pilot. He's not the pilot or the CIA. So it's like, are they not even telling him actually whose job it is to control the air about? Or is it just straight up like, oh, that's from another place, which could be the explanation?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think probably some people do know. I can't even speculate if it's from us. I don't think it's from us. I don't think that stuff, especially the stuff that comes out of the water. I think, you know, if you want to look for a reference, I think look at Richard Dolan's work. He's got a lot of work on underwater submerged objects. Yeah, I would just assume that anything that's down there has been down there for a very long time, is my guess. I think that a lot of the craft that we've retrieved has been from in the water.
Why do you think that?
UAP GERB did a lot of big deep dives on some of that stuff. Bob Lazar also says that he believes that, well, first of all, the checks were made out from, I think, the Office of Naval Intelligence or the Department of Naval Intelligence to Bob Lazar. So the Navy is massively involved. It's not the Air Force, it's the Navy. They're probably both dealing with their own things and don't even talk to each other about it. But the Navy, I think, has probably the most advanced technology in terms of like reverse engineering UFOs. If that's the situation, it's definitely the Navy.
But then how do you explain things like Right Pat and stuff like that?
Yeah, again, Air Force probably has some stuff, but I think the Navy's been pulling stuff out of the water for a very long time. There's a lot going on in the oceans, I think, and I think we're starting to hear about it more and more. When something crashes in the water, it doesn't really blow up.
Right.
You know, so it might be easier to grab what's in the water.
Now, that was what you mentioned this earlier. That was what Lou was talking about with Project Interloper, where the proposal was to like go out into the ocean, run some sort of nuclear simulation.
Yeah, even
test,
just have nukes.
have nukes and like try to draw.
Yep, lure them in. Yeah, and then they said that they canceled that. So
Yeah, that was good.
yeah, they said, never mind. Nah, we're not gonna do that. Yeah. You won't even try it? Nah, we won't even try it, I think.
What do you think of Lou? You've had him in too.
I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a very nice guy.
He's a nice guy too.
Yeah. I think he's a nice guy. You know, I'm not gonna comment on, you know, whether. Listen, he worked counterintelligence, and that as someone who is skeptical of things, of the nature of what we're being told, I have to be skeptical of what he says. But that's a general skepticism that I hold for anyone in counterintelligence, not specifically to Luke.
I agree. I think you have to have that for all of them.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, would gladly have dinner with him. He's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
He's been nice to me. He's been nothing but kind to me. You know, he did the podcast when it was like in the early stages, so, you know, he really he came through there. I can't knock him for that. As far as anything else goes, I mean, I think there are enough people on Twitter talking about that guy. I don't want to be a part of it.
It's such a negative culture within like the whole like UFO thing. I stay the fuck out of it. I've seen it before. It's like,
again, it's what we were talking about before. I just want to talk about people. You know, if Lou comes out and has like a, you know, some groundbreaking news, we can talk about that. You know, but as far as his character goes, I don't know him well enough to talk about that. I think he was nice to me, and I'll leave it at that.
I think it's another thing where people want things to be 0 or 100, and things can be a mixed bag.
I think so.
And I've said that.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've said that to his face on camera and off camera, and I feel pretty strongly that that is the case without knowing the full details of whatever it is he's involved or isn't involved with now. You know, so it's like, take what he says, do with it what you will.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of our job, put it out there for people to decide. And if they want to fight over that, they can fight over that. I think it just gets like,
all this shit.
you know, sometimes like, especially with you know, people fighting over him and stuff, I'm just like, all right, go out and touch some grass, people. You know what I mean? Like, there's better things to be fighting over here.
Absolutely.
You know, if you don't like his information, no problem.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah, like, you know, there's the picture, I think was the latest one, right, with the where he showed the crop circle type deal. I tweeted, I thought it was real. You know,
I was thinking of the dead babies one.
Oh no, I wasn't. I saw that one too. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that is not. People were saying that he passed something to me in episode 273.
Oh, they thought it was that.
Where I couldn't say what it was.
Yeah.
He's like, if I show you this, you can't say. And I look, and you just have me react to it. That is not what he showed me.
Okay.
What he showed me, all I'll say, I can't say what it was, but it was something that had words on it. That's all I'll say.
Oh, okay.
So it was not that. But like when I saw that, I was like,
I was never shown anything. So.
I was like,
Yeah. I was never sent a text with a weird image or any of that. When I saw that image of the crop circles, I was like, at first, I was like, oh, it's really like, and then I tweeted it, and then I was like, looking further, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty good illusion. You know, it is a really good illusion. It's a good optical illusion. And then I tweeted, oh yeah, K-Salt, somebody found it, you know, and that's, for me, that's all I cared about was the information. Let's look at the information. Oh, we found where it comes from. And some people are like, well, we gotta talk about where. No, you just gotta do your own research and like that's it. Well, why do anything more?
100%.
And obviously, you know, after things like that happen, I think naturally people's conviction level will lower with all the information that he puts out, and that's a shame to him if he's trying to put out truthful information. It's a shame for us receiving that truthful information because now it has to go through the filter of all this other stuff that you know showed up not to be true.
Right.
And so it's just unfortunate, is what it is. But there's no reason to crucify the guy for that. I think you can just make your own decisions and move on with your life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, man.
You are a fountain of information on this stuff, so it's fun talking with you about it. Your show is amazing. We'll have that link down below. We're also going to link your old YouTube channel too.
Appreciate
Magic, so people can go watch all the stuff you do. You're blowing my mind a few times today, so I guess thanks for that.
Thanks.
But it's great to finally meet you, man.
Likewise.
I've appreciated your support from afar and everything. It's been really cool. It's nice to put a name with the face.
Likewise. Love what you're doing here, and thank you to your audience for letting me have a space to chat about my shit.
Absolutely. Everyone go check out Area 50 Debriefed and Area 52 production. All right?
Thanks, fellas.
See you again soon. Everyone else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.
There's so much to unpack here. 3.5 weeks ago, I traveled to a remote village in South India to participate in this festival called Goraba. We just don't know if it's actually happening for a fact. We confirm it is real. They spent 6 months stockpiling